ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack outside the British Houses of Parliament on March 22nd. A man police identified as British-born Khalid Masood drove his car into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge. He then stabbed a police officer outside Parliament before he was shot by police. 2 civilians, the policeman and Masood, have been confirmed dead. At least 40 were injured. ISIS issued a statement saying a, quote, soldier of the Islamic State had carried out the attack. The group added he had been following a call to carry out attacks against countries in the U.S.-led coalition against ISIS, but did not indicate direct involvement. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Theresa May said the attacker had been investigated years ago by intelligence service MI5 for violent extremism, but described him as a, quote, peripheral figure. Police have arrested 8 people in connection with the attack, but have not stated what their involvement may be. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Sapporo is set to be the first major city in Japan to recognize same-sex relationships. In June this year, the city on Japan's northern island will start to recognize relationships in the LGBT community by issuing partnership vows. The government will issue a receipt and copy of the vows to couples who apply. This will enable couples to become each other's life insurance beneficiaries and allow for commercial discounts for things like phone contracts. It remains up to companies whether or not they recognize the proof of partnership, according to Mashable. To qualify, applicants must be residents of Sapporo over 20 years old and, quote, sexual minorities who recognize each other as a life partner, according to New Now Next. Shibuya Ward in Tokyo was first in Japan to officially recognize same-sex relationships, but Sapporo will be the first major city to do so. The program was slated to be introduced in April, but postponed for a period of public understanding. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
Kuwait has a problem with Disney's new movie, Beauty and the Beast. The film has been pulled from theaters in the predominantly Muslim country. The controversy has to do with the content of the new movie, which includes Disney's first openly gay character. Concerns center on a scene late in the movie involving Gaston's sidekick, Le Fou. The film, which has grossed more than $180 million overseas, had been showing in Kuwait since March 16th, but those who bought tickets to see the movie next week received text messages from Kuwait National Cinema Company saying that future screenings were canceled due to unforeseen difficulties. A board member at the company told the Associated Press that a newly edited version of the movie may return to theaters. The move follows bans in Alabama, restrictions in Russia, and a PG-13 rating revision in Malaysia. For Newsbeat Social in New York, I'm Rumi Fukushima.
Sources close to the matter say that federal investigators are looking into North Korea's possible role in a multi-million-dollar cyber heist. Thieves stole $81 million from accounts for Bangladesh's central bank at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York last year. Reported by CBS News, investigators began their probe into North Korea after they discovered similarities in the code used in the theft and the code used in the hacking attack on Sony Pictures in December 2014. The theft is considered to be one of the biggest bank robberies in modern times.
Arctic sea ice levels hit a record low for a third consecutive year. Scientists with NASA and the National Snow and Ice Data Center measured sea ice covering 14.42 million square kilometers. According to record keeping dating back to 1979, that is the smallest maximum extent of Arctic ice on record. Compared to last year's record low, ice covering the Arctic Ocean lost about 100,000 square kilometers. Satellite observations showed that winter ice levels are also thinner when compared to recent years. Those observations suggest that unusually warm autumn and winter temperatures have had a global effect.
As the river churned, desperation got the better of some. Risking his life over the Chillon River, this man almost gave up. A few hours before, 6 villagers of Guaraví had fallen from the makeshift bridge that collapsed on Wednesday.
Thank God we rescued them. They're in the hospital. One broke his rib, another one broke his leg.
Felix Garcia says more than 80 families have been isolated for a week since the main bridge was washed away. The river also swept through the town of Magdalena, leaving nearly 70 families stranded on the other side. This woman is trying to tell people they need water for their children. Luis Santos has been helping neighbors since he dared to cross in the basket.
We were isolated because the river washed the bridge away. The people there don't have water or power.
The force of the river burst its banks, tearing down trees, destroying farming fields, and leaving destruction along its path.
It's been a week since members of this community have been sending food and water across this cable because there aren't any government teams to rescue the people on the other side.
The river weakened parts of the Canta Highway, eroding its base. Private companies lent the government heavy equipment to keep the water from flooding again. And they're cleaning roads. The highway is blocked by cascading rocks from heavy rains and landslides nearly everywhere. Long lines of vehicles waited for hours before people lost their tempers. An ambulance on its way to pick up wounded finally got through. Peru's president said clearing roads is a priority in order to transport food from the highlands to the coast, hardest hit by the floods. Food is also scarce here. On Wednesday, children swarmed around volunteers who delivered aid to victims, and women prepared rice and beans to feed the community.
It's a shame. We can't fight against nature, but what are we here for? Look, we are poor, but we are all helping.
For now, most of these people are relying on neighbors to survive. Mariana Sanchez, Al Jazeera, Magdalena, Peru.
3 of ABC News' Twitter accounts were hacked early Thursday morning, sending pro-Trump posts out to the respective feeds. The social media account for ABC News, Good Morning America, and GMA's GMA Pop News were all hacked, ABC confirmed on Thursday. The Walt Disney Company-owned ABC News, which has close to 10 million followers on Twitter, had confirmed the hack on its own ABC News Twitter account earlier on Thursday morning, saying they were working on resolving the problem.
The Afghan Taliban has captured the strategically important district of Sangin in the southern Helmand province. Sangin is a hub for the lucrative opium trade, and according to the New York Times, it connects Helmand and Kandahar provinces. Central government officials have denied the district had been captured. However, local officials said March 23rd the Taliban forces have captured Sangin and Afghan forces have withdrawn. The Taliban has also released a statement claiming the capture of Sangin. Sangin's police chief told the Associated Press Afghan forces are preparing a counterattack to retake the city. This is the latest show of strength by the Taliban since NATO troops ended combat operations in 2014. The New York Times reports more U.S. and British Marines died in Sangin than in any other district in the country. Meanwhile, the BBC reports hundreds of Afghan security forces have died in recent fighting in Sangin. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
During an interview Thursday, former Vice President Al Gore said climate change was a chief cause of the Syrian civil war and Brexit. He said scientists have published peer-reviewed studies for many years showing why it's related to the climate crisis. He stated, from 2006 to 2010, 60% of the farms in Syria were destroyed and had to be abandoned, and 80% of the livestock were killed. Gore also said the drought in the eastern Mediterranean is the worst on record. Due to these factors, 1.5 million climate refugees were driven into the cities in Syria, where they ran into with refugees from the Iraq War. In terms of Brexit, he believes the large influx of refugees into Europe is creating political instability. This has contributed to the desire for some in the UK to say they no longer want to take part in that.
Large shopping center on a weekend. You come out of the store holding a bunch of bags and head to the parking lot where you can't quite remember where you parked. Well, now there's an app for that. TechCrunch reports Google Maps just added a parking location tracker. The latest version of the app includes some new features letting you manually save your parking location so it's easier to find your car when you need to leave. This tool can also help you avoid getting slapped with a parking ticket. If a spot is metered, it can count down the remaining time. The time left is displayed on the map, and when it's about to expire, Google Maps will send you an alert on your phone via push notification. Although the information has to be entered manually, it does let users input more data about their parking spots. There's space to jot down notes or even attach a photo if you're more of a visual person. For Newsbeat Social New York, I'm Rumi Fukushima.
U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry is suggesting that the election that gave his alma mater, Texas A&M, its first openly gay student body president was stolen. Perry decried the election of Bobby Brooks, who finished second in voting, but was awarded the presidency after top vote-getter Robert McIntosh was disqualified. Perry writes that the process at best made a mockery of due process and transparency, and at worst, allowed an election to be stolen outright.
Wednesday, March 22nd, the FBI was questioned by both Republicans and Democrats about the facial recognition software they use to identify potential suspects. They believe the FBI software invades American privacy, inspires racial bias, and leads to the arrest of innocent people. Stephen Lynch, Democrat, Massachusetts, stated, "I have zero confidence in the FBI and the Justice Department, frankly, to keep this in check. This is really Nazi Germany here, what we're talking about, and I see little difference in the way people are being tracked under this. Just getting one wide net and getting information on all American citizens."
This week, the FDA revealed 359 cases of a rare cancer that is reportedly linked to the use of breast implants. The cancer, known as anaplastic large cell lymphoma, or ALCL, is said to breach the cells around the implant. Since February, there have been 9 deaths reported said to be directly tied to the disease and use of implants. There are often many risks involved in surgical procedures. This, however, only recently came to the forefront of the public's attention. Researchers say ALCL is not a form of breast cancer and is found in the skin or lymph nodes. Doctors say the disease has typically presented in women who've experienced problems with their implants, such as lumps or asymmetry.
Fire has destroyed a North Dakota church owned by white supremacist Craig Cobb. The century-old church in Nome, North Dakota, burned to the ground Wednesday, March 22nd. A charred chimney is all that's left standing. Authorities say nobody was there at the time, and the cause remains unknown. Cobb, meanwhile, tells WDAY-TV he believes the fire was, quote, 100% arson. He says neither the gas nor electric was in service at the time. Cobb tells the TV station he's personally offering a $2,000 reward for information about the blaze. Cobb's previous attempt to turn another small North Dakota town into a white supremacist enclave was the subject of a 2015 documentary called Welcome to Leith. He bought the church in February, and Nome residents reportedly weren't very excited to have Cobb as their new neighbor. A state fire marshal is investigating. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
A Florida man's illegal burning of paperback books sparked a wildfire that quickly spread across 400 acres of land, damaging or destroying as many as 15 homes and forcing residents to evacuate in the northeastern part of the state, officials said on Thursday. The blaze started on Wednesday afternoon after the unidentified man burned books and magazines outside his home near Bryceville, about 20 miles west of Jacksonville, Florida. Dusty winds blew paper away from the initial burn site. Firefighters initially were able to contain about 5 acres of flames, but strong winds caused the inferno to spiral out of control. The man accused of starting the fire was cited for an illegal burn, but not charged with a crime. Up to 200 residents were asked to evacuate their homes and stay at nearby shelters.
California Governor Jerry Brown is not a fan of single-payer universal health care systems on its own, but he blasted President Donald Trump and House Republicans on Wednesday for their proposal to repeal and replace Obamacare. The Golden State governor stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and challenged the president to come down from Trump Tower. According to the Sacramento Bee, he said, "Mr. Trump, come down from Trump Tower and walk among the people and see the damage that this latest exercise in raw political power will wreak among the women, the men, and the children of this country."
According to reports, the knife-wielding terrorist who killed an American tourist and 2 others outside the UK Parliament was British-born and previously investigated for violent extremism. On Thursday, police identified the suspect as 52-year-old Khalid Massoud. Authorities said Massoud was born in Kent. Detectives believe he was most recently living in the West Midlands. Police said he was known by a number of aliases. Massoud was known to security services as a peripheral figure. Police also said Massoud was not the subject of any current investigations. There was no prior intelligence indicating his intent to carry out the terror attack.
A white U.S. Army veteran accused of stabbing a black man to death went to New York City on a mission to kill black people. That, according to police. James Harris Jackson allegedly encountered Timothy Kaufman collecting bottles and proceeded to stab him several times Tuesday, March 21st. An injured Kaufman managed to make it to a police precinct after the attack. The 66-year-old, however, was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Police say Jackson had been walking the streets with a 66-centimeter sword and looking for someone to attack. The 28-year-old turned himself into police on Wednesday. Assistant Chief William Aubrey said, quote, "The reason he picked New York is because it's the media capital of the world and he wanted to make a statement." New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio denounced the attack, saying, quote, "No act of violence can undermine who we are." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
Researchers have developed a molecule that selectively destroys so-called senescent cells. The compound makes old mice act and appear more youthful, providing hope that it may do the same for us. It's definitely a landmark advance in the field, says cell and molecular biologist Francis Rodier of the University of Montreal in Canada, who wasn't connected to the study.
YouTube dealing with a headache. More companies are now pulling their ads from the video streaming platform and other Google sites after learning some appeared next to extremist videos. Johnson & Johnson joins a growing list of concerned companies, including AT&T and Verizon, suspending all digital advertising on YouTube. Johnson & Johnson said it wants to make sure that its product ads don't appear on channels that promote, quote, offensive content. Reuters reporting Google's YouTube has been facing heat for ads appearing alongside videos carrying homophobic or anti-Semitic messages. The company issued an apology and has since promised to revamp its practices, but advertisers continue to have problems controlling online ad placement. They want to avoid having their brands appear beside controversial content that they categorize as hate speech. For Newsbeat Social in New York, I'm Rumi Fukushima.
A Native American tribe in Oklahoma has voted to permit same-sex marriage. The Osage Nation joins a small group of prominent tribes changing their law following the U.S. Supreme Court's 2015 decision making the practice legal in all states. The same-sex case known as Oberfell versus Hodges has gone through the 567 federally recognized Indian nations. As sovereign entities, they are not necessarily bound by the Supreme Court decision. This places many in the position of deciding whether to make the issue part of their traditional law. 52% approved a referendum amending the definition of marriage in the Osage tribe's legal code to include same-sex couples.
On Thursday, a young Israeli man who also has U.S. citizenship was arrested in Israel for making dozens of fake bomb threats against Jewish community centers in the United States and in other countries. A police spokesman said the suspect, whose identity has not been reported, is 18, Jewish, and a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. Galit Bash, the suspect's defense attorney, said a medical condition was the cause of the problem. A police spokesman said, "We believe he's responsible for the wave of calls, bomb threats made to Jewish community centers in the United States."
Moscow may be helping supply Taliban militants. According to Reuters, the top U.S. general in Europe said on Thursday that he had seen Russian influence on Afghan Taliban insurgents growing. He did not elaborate on what kinds of supplies might be headed to the Taliban or how direct Russia's role might be. Russian officials have denied they provide aid to the insurgents. They say their limited contacts are aimed at bringing the Taliban to the negotiating table. According to U.S. estimates, government forces control less than 60% of Afghanistan. Almost half the country is either contested territory or under control of the insurgents.
Scientists in Bangkok have mapped a spread of dengue fever to discover that it's a bit of a homebody. According to the recently published study, infections are most likely to occur with neighbors. Dengue fever is a viral disease transmitted by mosquitoes. The disease causes outbreaks of fever and muscular pain that is so excruciating it has earned the nickname breakbone fever. The researchers in Bangkok found that 60% of the dengue cases they studied were closely related, as they occurred within a 200-meter radius.
The U.S. military conducted an air assault in Syria, lifting allied militia fighters behind ISIS territory lines in an effort to retake areas around the town of Tabqa. The Pentagon announced March 23rd American forces had airlifted hundreds of fighters deep into ISIS territory to seize the Tabqa Dam. U.S. troops were not engaged in combat during the operation, and all the aircraft returned safely. It was the U.S.'s first air assault in its battle against ISIS. Coalition spokesman Colonel Joseph Skroka says it appears to have taken ISIS by surprise. Located about 59 kilometers west of Raqqa, Tabqa is a key ISIS stronghold. The New York Times says U.S.-led coalition forces are trying to seize the area to ultimately take back Raqqa. Skroka says the fighting is expected to, quote, last several weeks until the dam, airfield, and city are free from ISIS control. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Mila Uni.
Authorities said Thursday Belgian police intercepted a car that was speeding toward a busy shopping area and refused to stop. Authorities said Thursday the car, registered in France, was driving at a very high speed in central Antwerp. French President François Hollande called the incident an attempted terrorist attack. The prosecutor's office said at different times pedestrians were put at risk. When soldiers attempted to intercept the vehicle, it fled. Authorities eventually managed to stop the 39-year-old French driver and detain him. One witness filmed video of authorities taking away the suspect's car.
Wednesday on Fox News Channel's The O'Reilly Factor, New York's Republican Representative Peter King, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, admitted that he had a legitimate case to make regarding Obama wiretapping President Trump. He did say that Trump may have overstepped with his Twitter claim. Host Bill O'Reilly pressed King on the seriousness of Trump being surveilled, to which King said it was at least 99.5% correct he was surveilled.
In the day following a terror attack in London, crowds gathered in the heart of the city to pay tribute to the victims. A vigil was held just minutes away from Wednesday's carnage in Trafalgar Square. As the workday came to an end, hundreds began to trickle into the square to show solidarity. Mayor Sadiq Khan addressed the crowd, saying, "We come together as Londoners tonight to remember those who have lost their lives and all those affected by the horrific attack yesterday, but also to send a clear message: Londoners will never be cowed by terrorism."
Japan's military might was on full display March 22nd with the country's new helicopter carrier, the Kaga, entering service. The Kaga is the country's second-largest helicopter carrier, joining the ship Izumo. The addition of the Kaga to Japan's fleet comes amid a contentious time in the South China Sea, with countries jockeying for control of territory there. Reuters reports Japan's Vice Minister of Defense, Takayuki Kobayashi, said at the ship's inauguration ceremony, quote, "China is attempting to make changes in the South China Sea with bases and through acts that exert pressure is altering the status quo, raising security concerns among the international community." China's foreign ministry was quick to issue a response to the new ship, saying China was on high alert. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been pushing for Japan to play a larger role in global military conflicts and has increased the country's military budget. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.